All right, welcome everyone. I have David Beaver here and Tommy, who's now head of product development. I'm growing a first beard in my life. I'm going to see how it goes. It's not looking so good,
We got to
so
catch up.
we'll see how this goes. But we wanted to talk today, authentically about the Stubby nozzle. I wanted to get it from David, who's the owner of ApexAire and sort of has developed this. This was his idea. And to clarify, the ApexAire product is not an Obsessed Garage product; it's David's product. But we have a lot of input together, and Tommy's been working very closely with David to make something great. And we wanted to sort of take you through and talk about the product development process. David's going to tell you a lot about what he's learned, and kind of take you through the process of what that's like to bring manufacturing to the US, which is something that we'd like to do on this product. And we're going to share you the struggles and the wins and losses and stuff like that through this process. But I also wanted to do this so that you guys knew, we're not trying to dodge anything here. We're just trying to make a great product. And, this, especially if you've never done it before, takes time and there's a learning process. So, Dave, why don't you tell us the story, of, I've already told them the story of how we kind of got started with this, but more of the manufacturing process. Let's kind of work through the starting in China and kind of working through the process there.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I'll start with a bit of a bio here. I am a OG member of the community, been involved since the 991.1 Sapphire Blue GT3 days. I don't know when that was, and met a lot of the other, I guess, kind of core group at a Rupa's polishing class. And I'm married, got a young family, and the garage and cars are things that I love. When people come over to my house, the garage is the first place that I take them because it's my favorite room in the house. And somewhere along the line, Matt, I saw you using a leaf blower to dry your car back in the, I think it was a steel leaf blower. People were dogging on you that it was gas powered and that it was going to be throwing oil or whatever on your car. And then one day you bought an Ego, and I saw a couple other guys using the Egos somewhere back in 2019. And around that time, I actually already started ApexAire. But Ego Stubby was not on the timeline or the product focus at all. Believe it or not, it was an air freshener that I was wanting to develop. I had hired an engineer, interviewed a number of engineers, filed a provisional patent even for this new air freshener. That didn't pan out. Might return, but in that story, I bought an Ego. I was impressed by the power, the battery life, all the things that I think most people are. And I enjoyed the process of using a leaf blower for the car. And but in my decision of what I'm going to do with my product company, to which I've never developed a product from start to finish, what do I want to do with that? Air fresheners just did not seem like the thing that was something I really wanted to start with. It was overly saturated, and Ego was something I was using. So right around that time, hired an engineer as a bit of an experiment, did some prototyping, and then after I sent one to another Obsessed Garage community member who he had been testing it for a couple months, I sent something to you, Matt, early 2020, and you started using it. You started liking it, and so that's the beginnings of all of this.
And that was a really fragile 3D printed,
Yeah.
something we had to be very careful with because it was the prototype. It was, and I still have that thing. Still works great. Now if I dropped it on, it would probably snap in half. But
Yeah.
I loved it and it worked. And there was nothing out there. No one had anything. There weren't any of these other options that seemed to be coming to market. and people were freaking out because they saw this thing I was using in videos, this prototype thing, and
Yeah.
So we knew that we had a product, knew that something that I wanted, you wanted, Tommy, we all wanted this, and if someone can make it, then great. That was
Yeah,
my attitude.
I remember that. I remember that video. It was like an live unboxing, and you were unboxing it with a bunch of other cool stuff that you had in the garage. And because it is a 3D printed, made of this SLA material, it's brittle. And I sent a box, hopefully packed well. But it arrived. You unboxed it. Who knows how it actually, what shape it was going to be in. And I didn't provide you any instructions. I think that was the point, is I wanted you to just unbox it, test it out for yourself. Thankfully, everything was still in one piece. And I have my own inventor's bias, so to speak, with that. So of course I thought it was going to be, oh yeah, this is going to be great. But I understand, I see my own bias in that. And I didn't know how you were going to take it, Matt, whether you thought that this was going to be junk or this was going to be cool and useful. And at that point, interestingly, I was more focused up until then around that flat spread nozzle as the first product, as far as the tip is concerned, because that's what this other Nick Jones had this prototype for a number of months, and that's what he had for many months, and he loved it, and I loved it. And so when at the last minute I included that tapered tip on there, which ended up being the one that you liked the most, and it seemed like it was the most easy to produce initially, which it was. And we'll come back to what the future might hold with those other tips, but it's pretty interesting to see how you experience that for the first time, and really just the feedback that everyone watching was providing. I didn't expect it, and at that point, I think going from experimental prototyping to then asking myself the question, do I actually want to do this? Because people were saying, when is it going to be available? And at that point, I had no clear path of what that was going to look like, how much that was going to cost. I knew it was going to cost a lot more than the $5,000 or whatever I paid in engineering experimental prototyping and parts. But that was the baby step that I took, not knowing what was going to come after that.
So to bring people up to speed of my involvement in these kind of things, we've done several products, the PP plug, we've done the bracket for the Cox hose reels, we've done the some things that had a little bit more involved, the quick disconnect, yeah. So we've done some of these products, but like and then everybody here and Tommy and the whole team we're up to our eyeballs. So it makes sense, and I think this is the formula for the future, to have all these talented people like you, David, and that are out there in the world, that if I attempted to do what you're doing, I'd have to shut everything else down and do just that. It just wouldn't be a practical thing to do. And so but I do think that I have a marketing platform that is here and available to be used to turn people on to products. Yeah, I'm doing a so the idea was that, well, shoot, if you run with this and you make something great, and we can just have some input into it, that then we can turn on the the OG audience to these products. And so if you are showing up with a great product without the audience, then there's no one to sell it to.
Right.
So you lose focus on having to go sell it. And so I think the synergy of having you focus on building the product, and then me, and our team then marketing the product, seems like a good idea to me. And now there's always reputational risk when you're developing a product, and what most companies do is they don't share this process, right? They don't share the ascent. They just try to launch a produced, functioning, finished thing.
Yep.
And I don't really like, I'm too impatient for that. Right? So we launch pre-orders and
Yep.
hey, if you want to get involved in this, you want to get in on this, it's freaking 60, $70, or like with the press-up bottles, I've been doing that. And so I think that formula, although there's reputational risk there, is the way to go, as long as we're purely honest and authentic about it.
Yeah.
So you had approached me, and I sort of came back and said, look, you make this thing and I'll sell it. And so that's kind of how our relationship has worked. And so I want people to understand, you'll explain this, but I want people to understand that, like, neither one of us is like independently wealthy. Like people think,
No.
we're just dudes doing what we love.
Yeah.
And I don't have like $20 million in a trust fund sitting somewhere. Like every day is a struggle to try to finance this whole thing. Right.
Yep.
So you and I kind of got together and said, look, I don't have money to invest in your company. What I can do is maybe place an order ahead of time to help you finance this thing.
Yeah.
Because I think that I could then recoup that pretty quickly with a pre-order, and we could kind of do it that way. But the risk to doing that, which is what we found, is delivery times. And of course the perfect storm happened, which you're going to explain, of supply chain totally fell apart.
Yeah.
In this process.
Yeah. The timing in world history of launching a product like this was, man, I never knew that it was going to be this challenging. And going from us having that conversation, Matt, of you saying, hey, you produced this thing, I'll put a pre-order in, certainly helped a lot. Again, I'm not independently wealthy. Income that I get is from my job, and my wife also works outside the home, and we have 3 young kids, right? So I'm just another Obsessed Garage member of the community, right? I'm not some guy who's just in my tower developing products and have endless amounts of income or assets to use that from. So we had to make a decision there of like, how is this going to look? And I was advised just to gauge my expectations of, David, whatever you think it's going to cost, even with your best calculator, it's going to be costing double that, if not more, to develop a product from start to finish. And I believe that's to be true. I can share a bit more of the data of really what it took financially to get to where we're at. And but in that development process, we have this engineering team, this vendor that I've been partnered with from the beginning. And just in the community that I'm based out of Colorado, there's a lot of influence of bioengineer, as well as, hold on one sec. I think I lost my mic. Sorry, guys.
You're still good.
Okay. Fumbling through this is good. But in my community, there's a lot of influence of biomedical engineering, as well as aerospace engineering. And I found another vendor, this engineering firm, that a guy who started that came from one of these backgrounds. And then he's also hired contract engineers that are guys that love to design things mechanically and test things, that have manufacturing backgrounds of going from not just design for things that look nice, but also function well and design for manufacturing. And so as I've been working with them.
So how do you find these people? Is this someone Nick Jones knew? Nick Jones is the guy of the Morton building out there in Colorado, who came to the Rupes event with all of us. That's how we all met. Mike F was there.
Yep.
Kyle came to one of them. Dave Plotz, right. So all these people that I'm,
Yep, Dave Plotz. Yep.
So there, Chris Kim. There was like a 50 of us that all are now BFFs for life, because we experienced something that we never experienced before, which was a bunch of like-minded people that tend to be introverts. So anyway, how did you find this guy, this engineering place?
Yep. So it didn't come from Nick, although Nick and David have been hugely great friends throughout since that time, and have been really helpful in chiming in and asking how things are going with this project. I got introduced to this guy from a friend that I knew, and I asked him, because he was working for some toy tech company in Boulder, and I said, hey, I need to develop a consumer product from the ground up. Can you help me? And he says, no, I'm not the guy that you need for that. But if I was in your shoes, I would talk to my other friend, one of his old colleagues who spun off on his own. And so that's how that relationship began. Now, it wasn't just one engineering firm that I consulted with. It was actually multiple. And I got a variety of different proposals, decided to pick one, which is the one that I'm still working with today. And I'm grateful for that. Their engineering team has evolved over the years too, since working with them. And in as recent as the modifications that we're making towards the new product version that's coming out, there's an engineer that's only been there for 6 months, who's been on all of the modification team that has this aerospace background that's been really helpful. His name's Todd. So all these modifications, I've nicknamed them. That's the Todd modification, to make certain things, certain aspects even better. And their team, project manager, it's not just engineering, but there's a project manager that's been really helpful throughout that process. Now, the connection from design to then, like, how do we actually start manufacturing this? That took a certain leap of faith, because these engineers have relationships of their own and vendors of their own that they've done some work with. I think that's just like with anything. If you hire someone to build your house, the contractor is not going to do every part of that. There's going to be all these subcontractors that are going to be a part that are likely other companies. And this is a similar feeling of saying, hey, I trust, this contractor, so to speak, and they're going to bring in some experienced person for that job. And so that's where the connection to then saying, hey, we have this product design, to then, hey, where are we going to go build the injection mold? And how is that going to be? An aluminum injection mold? Is that going to be a steel injection mold? Aluminum is more prototype based. You can only get 20,000, 30,000 shots out of that injection mold. And if it was aluminum, steel can do 300,000 or 400,000, or sometimes even more, depending on the material. And so we were exploring all of those options. And keep in mind, this is all during the pandemic, where everyone's unsure of what the world is up to, and what the future of manufacturing, what the future of supply chain is going to look like. And after weighing all of those options, I decided to go with this tooling vendor that's based out of Colorado, but they have a lot of relationships in Asia for creating injection molds made out of steel, and doing that in less time than a lot of the US based tool makers were quoting us on. And it was going to cost a little less. And that the adaptation of that Asian made injection mold to then a local manufacturer in Colorado, which is up the road, they've done that before with a variety of other projects. And that felt good to me. That felt good to know that there was some resemblance of a system, of a process, of saying, hey, we have this design, we're going to go cut steel. In this case, this is mainland China, and they're going to send us samples of those production parts. We're going to then approve or reject them, and then depending on how that process goes, we're going to get closer and closer, and eventually we're going to say, all right, yeah, those look good. Let's make a certain amount, a certain batch, and then we're going to ship the injection mold back. And that was the plan from the beginning, and that's actually how the plan went. It's just the timeline of how that all has gone was highly unpredictable.
So you hire somebody to do, what do they do? This on like SolidWorks or something. They draw up this thing.
Yep.
You say, here's what I want. Here's the tube. You sketch it. Here's roughly what I want to do. So, and you pay someone to draw that up. To make the drawings.
And so the engineering team does that. And that's called DFM, where they say, hey, we're going to design this for manufacturing, not just for prototyping, because that's one thing. Design for manufacturing includes, where's, in this case for injection molding, where's the parting line going to be for where the injection mold tool comes together and separates? Where's that going to be? Also, what's called draft angles, as parts come together and it opens up again to release the part. And everything needs to be designed in such a way to where that part, that now newly created part, releases from the injection mold without any what's called drag lines or scrapes or other damage to that part. But then also things like texture and venting, and because you got to think you're heating up this material, this resin, and then the tool is also steel, it's being heated up. You're injecting this material into this injection mold, and depending on parameters of heat, time, cycle time, and how everything is constructed with that injection mold, that's gonna depend a lot on the design. And so the engineering team with this background, they're the ones that played a huge role on all of that DFM work. And then they communicate with the tool maker, and that tool maker runs these simulations before they cut any steel of, hey, based off this design, we're anticipating some sort of what's called a sink mark, or some sort of flashing, or some sort of other defect, visual defect, that we all probably are familiar with when it comes to cheaper plastic made toys or parts or whatever. But for us, we're looking at, hey, how can we hone this design into where we eliminate sink marks or eliminate flow lines of the material entering into that injection mold, to where it has different textures or colors. And that communication, we have email threads that are 80 replies of how is this going to be designed. And I looking back on that, the communication between China and our team and that injection mold vendor liaison, that was not an easy process, because there was a language barrier, plus COVID was going on throughout all of this time, to where China's zero COVID policy was that if someone in the factory or in their tool making or tool shop got COVID, everything shut down for 2 weeks. And so we have these barriers of someone gets COVID, factories close, or manufacturers close for 2 weeks. So as I think about and recall hey, when is the Stubby going to be available, which a lot of last year was the question. I think the hardest thing for me in this process, even still to this day, has been the feeling of, hey, I'm getting a feedback on, here's the timeline of when the next step or when the next product is going to be available. And even if I double that timeline in my head before I communicate to Brad on your team, or Tommy, or whomever, or you, Matt, I'm feeling this, like each time I would have to renegotiate that to where it's delayed further. I'm sorry. And part of me felt out of integrity throughout this process, because I would set an expectation of deadline, and then that deadline would not be met. Not necessarily with things that I have control over, but even with me controlling the multiplication of that timeline, that was hard. That was hard for me. Still is hard to this day, of communication of deadlines.
So you did the drawings, right? You did
Mhm.
the DFM drawing,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
And then you sought patents, right? So
Mhm.
you have a legal
Mhm.
process.
Yep.
While you're doing that, you already built made the corporation and all that, and you're
Yep.
negotiating with me and deals
Yep.
and figuring out how you're going to pay for this thing. And then so after the drawings, so you pay a certain amount for the drawings.
Yep.
Then you're talking to the engineers about all this, building the mold and all that
Yeah.
stuff. You're having to shell out money every time you do this, right? I mean, do you
Yeah.
pay them by the hour? How does this work?
It's hourly. Yeah. It's similar with attorneys. You
So they're
touched on
charging you for
patents.
all 80 of those emails, right?
Yep. 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 And even when I want to get a certain render or a certain drawing or view for my own self to see something visually, or even to send things to you guys for you guys to see and understand what to expect, the guys are on the clock for that. and then they send me an invoice every time a certain amount of days goes by that needs to be paid in 15 to 30 days.
How many times have you almost bailed? Roughly.
Oh, gosh, earlier this year was a tough one. I don't think I've considered bailing. Once you and I had that discussion, Matt, and we said, here's what we want to do, how we want to. Hey, you're going to pre-order, and I'm going to keep going. I don't think from that point I ever really looked back, but it was the wrestling before the experiment and me signing up for such a commitment where I was dancing in and out of that commitment. But once we said, hey, let's go, that's where I didn't look back. But I will say that earlier this year, when the initial 1,000 Chinese made units landed at OG and went from this excitement, enjoyment of seeing that process. Even Michelle had sent me a picture or video or something of all the OG team putting everything in boxes and shipping it out, and then going from getting some feedback that I didn't like, which was either fitment issues or certain things that we didn't even see coming that people expected around the pull off of that distal tip. That was a tough time for me, feeling like that story in my head of, gosh, I should have thought of that. I should have thought of that one too. And not really knowing what to do from there at that point. We're confident now what to do, but in that moment, that week of, gosh, what just happened, or what's going on, or what went wrong, that was tough. That was tough.
You know, the crankiness of the entitlement of certain people, you know, you can see I have zero tolerance for. You know how much crap I've bought in my life that didn't work? I'm not complaining. I'm like so thankful, despite my face and the look of my anger. I'm so thankful for things like the Stubby, you know, to exist. And so I have zero tolerance for freaking Facebook crybabies. Like, you don't understand, like, look, because I have a concept for what goes into this. You're so far into this that I wouldn't even do it. Right. So I'm so thankful that you're even trying, that we have something that works, and there's some tweaks that we might need to modify some things. Plus, I also come from the car modification world where nothing works ever. Yeah. And so you accept that. I'm just thankful that a company tried to build an exhaust that makes car sound better. And this complaining, this entitlement, I have no tolerance for. And so part of the reason I want to share this, so people can grasp the concept of, you know, the risk involved in doing this kind of stuff. You know, the risk involved in taking on a project like this, even something as simple as what you would think, you just cut the end of the Stubby, cut the end of the long tip off, and, you know, and put something else on it. The legal aspect, the dollar aspect, the supply chain aspect, dealing with engineers and figuring out how to make this thing work is not simple. You know, it's really not.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be more simple in my own naive point of view than it actually is.
The idea is easy.
Yeah.
The idea is easy. The manufacturing and then the selling. And this was my argument. I didn't have to argue with you because I think you understood this, but this has been my argument to a lot of companies, is that the customer is the hardest part. Finding the customer is the hard part. And that's why why salesmen make more money than anybody else, because actual placing the product with customer is the difficult part. And so as we found, you know, we sold tons of these things. And then there's 99% of the people are like, man, this is great. You know, there's, you know, it needs some tweaks clearly. And then the 1% are the people that want to punch directly in the throat for being a bunch of entitled babies. But I want to share authentically what this is about and why, you know, why we're doing this, and why it costs what it costs, you know, that sort of thing. You know, I'm always talking about build something to what it needs to be, not to a price point. So all the other options out there are built to a price point. They're just trying to make some money. We would all like to make some money. That's the result the money is the result for us, not the guidance, not the goal. The money is the result of this pursuit, of this chase. Okay, so you've made the mold. We made the mold in China. We took the order, pre-order. We thought it would take, a couple, like 2 or 3 months. We made a projection to the audience, said, hey, if you want to put your order in here, this will help me finance the darn thing. I was very clear about that. It'll help my purchase, helps David finance the thing. And then, it took 2 or 3 extra months because they kept shutting down, down. Then you can't get a container. Then you can't get a boat. Then it sits on the boat, and then it doesn't come into port, and then there's no one to unload it off the dock, and the perfect storm of all this stuff. And 1% of the people are, where's my $60 Stubby? I tell them to shove that $60 up their rear. Just be patient here. The world is falling apart, for gosh sake. It's $60. If it's that important to you, you shouldn't have bought it in the first place. And that's with any product. And I take a lot of heat for having that, but it's real. It's the truth. And you shouldn't be freaking bent out of shape about something you don't even really need. It's something that we all want. And so then fast forward to today, where we're at. So you bring the mold here, right? So the mold comes to the US. And the first 1,000 were part of the prototype test, if you will. The production it's not a prototype, it's a production piece.
Yeah, production units, kind of like volume 1 or version 1.
And those are just to test the mold and to make sure the mold can handle it. And so then once those thousands are produced, that was the first 1,000 that we placed. One of the things we didn't recognize was that, well, each one of these freaking egos is a different size. Not the tip, it's the darn ego. The ego blowers have a tolerance in it, so we figured that out. We also figured out that people were going to be lifting it up from the tip. And so then figured out there's we need to adjust the springs. And I think the one thing I could have done a little bit better was to make people understand that this is a one step beyond prototype into production. So you're like early adopting this here. It's like any car, it's like any computer, it's like any device. When you're early adopting, I always personally, a lot of times I won't early adopt. I'll wait for the second or third generation of something if I'm not willing to be a part of the process. And so maybe I didn't make it clear enough to the people that, hey, I'm going to have, this is like no nonsense. Like, don't fricking cry yourself to sleep over $60. Just fricking throw it away if you don't like it, or just be, patient with this process. So we then get the 1,000, ship the 1,000 out. We have Stubby Gate where people are freaking out, saying, you're evil and the world sucks and man, this is horrible. And I
this is junk and
I tell them to shove it up their rear. It's pretty darn good for the first try. I think it's awesome. Put some tape around the thing if you really think you need to. That sent people off, a small percentage of people off the deep end. And then my argument to the audience is like, I don't have $100 million to we could all eat like $60, not a big deal. But people expect Walmart delivery of things or Nordstrom where you can return everything. And it doesn't, if I do that, then I'm fail and none of this works and we don't have any of this crap. And again, 99% of the people understand this. So then you bring the mold here and we take some more pre-orders and bring us up to speed where we're at now. What's the struggle? Why are people waiting? What are we waiting for?
One clarification there is that every unit that has been delivered to customers has been the Chinese manufactured units. So the 2,000 that are in circulation, so to speak, have all been the version 1 from China. Now, the version 1 from China, they did a great job cosmetically. The materials that they use, even just the processing of dialing in that assembly, everything just cosmetically looks beautiful. The trade-off though is that there's this huge, what we're seeing is this huger variance in tolerance than what we expect. So a huge learning for me has been to bring those units to our own, in this case, the engineering firm that I work with is going to be doing quality control. They should have done quality control before we actually sent them to Obsessed Garage. I was under this impression, the story in my head said, we've got to get these units delivered to Obsessed Garage ASAP, in which that was true, but even against the advice from the project manager he said, David, just bring them to us first so we can quality control them. All I heard was more time, and I've already been renegotiating time, and I didn't want to do that anymore. So we air freighted directly from China to Obsessed Garage, those first 1,000, and then even the subsequent 1,000 that eventually came in over the next 6 weeks, whatnot, were all from China. And so what's a strange feeling is we actually still don't know what the variance and tolerances dimensionally of those initial 2,000 Chinese parts are. I'll come back to what I'm proposing here in a bit. But that was a big learning for me, is that I do not need to force a timeline and cut that last bit of quality corner in that quality control of measuring and weighing these parts before they're delivered to Obsessed Garage or customers. And so huge learning for us. But then to fast forward into where we're at more recently, is that we've shipped then the injection molds from China to a manufacturer up the road. They've been in business for over 50 years. They primarily, up to this point, have been working on consumer products, inclusive of glass reinforced firearm accessories for certain markets, and they do other medical products, things like that. They're clean room certified. This is not a clean room manufactured product, but they have a variety of things that they put together. And they were excited about this. They're still excited about this. What I loved about this manufacturer is that they're up the road from me. They're 20 minutes from where I live. And there's been probably once a week since that injection mold has landed there, I've been in their office or in their manufacturing, on the manufacturing floor, talking with their processing technicians around how we can improve or dial in and adapt this Chinese-made injection mold to their own machines, their own presses, and their own resins that they're sourcing. And so rather than this 80 thread email, we're having meetings, and I'm hands-on product and talking with Zach or Sam or Ted that's working with the product development on the manufacturing side directly. And even the engineering team can come up, they're right up the road as well. They can come join us. So it's been a huge change in the communication and what we're wanting to accomplish from this point moving forward. And yeah, we're excited. We're excited about the updates that are being made, but still in the supply chain and or global logistics crisis that was the last 1,000 days. The decision to air freight anything out from China was the decision I made, so we can get products here, or even the injection mold here, within 14, 15 days, versus waiting an unknown amount of time to put it on a boat to sail it across the ocean. That could take 10 weeks, could take 24 weeks. No one really can give me an answer. So certainly there was a cost involved with that, and import duties, taxes involved in all of that as well. As you can imagine, I mean, the injection molds themselves, they're these steel blocks, and they weigh 2,200 kilos, which is like 4,800 pounds. So that's more than a F90 M5. And to air freight that and directly to our manufacturer here locally was not cheap, and to create that up. And so we learned a lot. I'm glad we did that, because what I'm finding is that the time it has taken from that landing to then adapting it to the U.S. manufacturer and their process, their machines, and their with the setup sheets from China, it wasn't clear of exactly how we can reproduce these parts exactly as they did, because we wanted to get a baseline before we started modifying. And that has been a slower process than I anticipated. and but we're making huge strides. I have boxes of samples that are going to be literally in the trash, because I think I sent some photos to you guys of how some product manufacturing fails, of what things should not look like as far as a finished product. We even discovered that there was some damage in the injection mold that we needed to have repaired, and the only place to retexture, at least closest to us here in Colorado, was in Minnesota. So parts of this flew back to Minnesota, came back over here to help bring this thing home. And we've made some modifications, which we can discuss here here soon. But there's also future modifications that are going to happen as well. So I don't know if that helps summarize, but when that injection mold had landed, then we went to work on what's the path to getting a baseline great parts dimensionally, cosmetically, and then we went to making some of those modifications that we wanted, all of which took a lot longer than I expected.
Your original assumption was, okay, we're going to make the mold. It'll take them 2 to 3 months to make the mold, get the product here. So we launched the product in, I think, November of 2021, something like that.
Yep.
Right. And or I guess we launched our pre-order probably in October, right, Tommy? Something like that.
Yeah,
with the hope to deliver in some time between December and February. Was our, I think we told people January would be delivery. We delivered in what, April? Something like that.
Yep.
Yeah. And so the original thought was, make the mold, make the first 1,000 or make the first 2,000 there, testing the mold.
Yep.
Mold would then kind of follow those over here, right? And so as soon as the mold shows up, we're back into production, because the mold is the hard part, right? So that was the assumption. You'd be in production. And so the first 2,000, we would have like maybe a 2 or 3 month delay between the second 1,000 and the next infinite amount was correct. The thought. And so
that was the idea.
Yeah, and in a normal environment, that probably would have been the case, right?
Maybe.
And so the struggle here with the audience, with people who bought these things, is they're probably thinking, well, why don't you guys just hang on to all this? Why don't you just wait? And I think sure, we would love to wait. It probably would have been a better thing to do. But all indicators were, here's how it's going to go. We're going to do this. And then we put a 2-month fudge factor in on top of all of that.
Yep.
Well, we needed a 6-month fudge factor, apparently. So we should have delayed the pre-order 6 months. And we probably should be having the pre-order now, is what we probably should have done.
That's right.
And then more testing. But at some point, I do this with videos all the time, you just have to ship, you have to launch.
Yep.
And you have to take the risk, because we're running out of money, we're running out of time, because we're running out of money, and that's the risk. And I think we're on track here. So what happens next? So I think we have 200 or 300 people, Tommy, to help us, Tommy, bring us up to speed on where we're at and where people are at with the product.
Sure. Well, I think, like David had mentioned, when he brought the molds over from China to the US, the goal was to have, production parts ready, a lot quicker than we originally anticipated. And so right now we have around, I think it's like 280 to 300 people waiting on an Ego Stubby right now. But when the first, I guess, tester pieces of the, American-made Stubby came, David shipped us a sample just to make sure it fitted well and things like that. And this is part of the process that's taking longer. We noticed that it wasn't fitting on the tube quite right. And so I think part of the reason for that is, and David, you'll probably speak better to this than I will, but like the material that they used in China reacts different than the material that the people in the US and in Colorado are using and making. Yep. And so those slight variances results in a part that is slightly different, and that slightly different just makes it where it's not quite good enough to mass produce that way. It didn't fit on the tubes. And so we had tried, there's different settings that you can adjust in an injection molded part. If I remember correctly, it's how long it takes to cool, and then
Mhm.
how quickly you are shooting the material into the part itself.
Yep.
And so one of the things we attempted to do at first was to adjust these settings to hopefully adjust the end result size of the tube to the ego. And so we were able to, I think, adjust it enough where it was acceptable onto where the proximal tube fit onto the ego. But when we did that, that resulted in the distal tip coming off of the proximal tube a lot easier. And so through back and forth and things, we I gave feedback where like, hey, I think we need to, before we do anything, we need to fix this. And so that's where, these next steps are going to come. And I guess, David, you can speak to those a little better.
Yeah, I appreciated Tommy's feedback, Manny's feedback throughout this process, because we were getting these sample parts, and Tom is exactly right. We're using this material. In this case, it's a nylon material, which is a bit fickle, but it's also extremely durable and UV stabilized, because this is outdoor power equipment. But in that, and all those qualities, it's also this fickle material to where things like ambient humidity in mainland China versus Colorado, which is a very dry climate, there's these huge differences that exist. Also, we had to play with the what's called packing. How much material are we putting in each part? Because depending on how much we're shoving in there, it'll affect the size of the part. And so that's why I have boxes and boxes of these parts, these sample parts, because we're running different processing parameters as a part of this. And Tommy was extremely helpful in helping me see the forest through the trees, because he was able to really fit this on the blowers that you guys have, and help just give the feedback that we needed, because we were so entrenched in the processing and adaptation of that tool that Tommy and Manny was just really helpful in that update.
The
The other thing that we also,
does it fit? Does it work?
Bingo. And gosh, when I first got into this, especially when it comes to take car manufacturers, the first year of a new generation of car, we all know that there's some bugs to work through. And I always thought, gosh, when I make a product, I'm never going to have those problems. And yet there's these car manufacturers with millions and millions of dollars, and plenty of assets and plenty of resources and experience of producing vehicles, that they still have those problems, even some of the best manufacturers of cars out there. And so the Obsessed Garage's input on that real world experience, hands-on experience, was a bit of the thing that we needed in order to get the fit dialed in to the Ego blower itself, not only from a material and process standpoint, but what we did, one modification we did is we added 6 ribs that run longitudinally down the interior of the part that attaches to the Ego blower output. And those are not big ribs. They are 10,000ths of an inch, sometimes 12,000ths of an inch in certain parts, certain ribs, in order to get this fit to where it's a solid attachment to the Ego blower. We also, in the initial design, we included that rubberized gasket as part of the design, but we're seeing that was just a recipe for quality control issues down the road, and even in the US manufacturing world. But we said, gosh, if we can eliminate that gasket, because it could shift or just not retain its position for a long period of time, if we can change some of the substrate or the harder material, nylon material dimensions, and just get a more snug fit, knowing that it can fit the entire Ego lineup, that's what we wanted. And I think that's based off of Tommy and Manny's feedback. They feel good about it. We feel good about the changes that we made to to fix what is the wobble or the wiggle, whatever everyone called it, fitment to the ego blower.
Well, that's what was so like eye-opening to me, I guess, is like we knew that something needed to change, right? Like it just wasn't right when we put it on the ego, the original ones, it wobbled.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what blew my mind is how finite of a change, like how small the change needs to be to fix it. Like you're talking, 10,000ths of an inch. That's like what, 2 human hairs or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yep. Yep.
It's remarkable how little changes are needed to make it right.
Yep. Yep.
And
I have
I
huge
think,
amounts of respect for people that produce products now.
Yeah, sure.
yeah, and I think that the casual audience member probably hasn't made it this far, but the casual person is, I don't care about any of this, just get it to me. And my argument is, if then it won't exist. Then the 2008 E92 M3, which has made a bunch of issues, doesn't exist. If they don't eventually try, just try to launch it. We got to launch it. We got to launch. Otherwise, you got to quit. You got to bail. And so that's what I'm so sensitive to in this, and so thankful for in this process, is that, and I'm willing to risk my reputation on this, because I understand the pain involved in this, in the trial and error in this. And so I think the next question is, aren't there ones out there already that don't have any of these problems theoretically, that I could buy for less money, whether they're 3D printed or they're Chinese manufactured? Why would anybody, why are we hanging on to this hope of this better produced thing that seems to be more problematic than making something janky and simple?
Yeah. Well, I think it comes down to preference for somebody, because someone might be more than happy with, let's just say, a stubby nozzle, which has, I think, done great things for this type of application. Stubby nozzle is a 3D printed part, and there's nothing wrong with 3D printed parts. And again, they've done a great job with seizing the opportunity. Some people really enjoy that, but I think it comes down to preference. Matt, I've heard you say, well, I want this one. I want the ApexAire, right, model. And I don't necessarily want that. And for some people, they're gonna think like you, or think like me, and some people aren't. And so I think it comes down to that person's preferences of, hey, do I want something that fits a certain way, looks a certain way, or do I want something else? And I think one of the things that this differentiates the ApexAire Stubby is that the overbuiltness of it, where when going into this project, I wanted something overbuilt, and in a way that was down to the material, down to the wall thickness, down to the springs, the clips, even the process of attaching that rubberized tip, where it is, the process is called overmolding. It's not just attached after the fact, or glued on, where it's actually, that tip is placed inside the injection mold, and a new injection mold piece clamps down on that part and injects that rubberized material to where it's actually chemically bonded to that part itself, as well as mechanically based off of how the design is underneath. That there's these manufacturing things that we chose to do that were just overdone, I think, in right ways. So some people will appreciate that and want that, and some people will not. And I think that just comes down to that person's opinion, and how much money they're either wanting to spend or how much time they're willing to spend on waiting for that final product. I think the expansion too, which we haven't touched on this, but the expansion of the system over time is going to be something I think of interest. Again, I have my own bias with that, but not everyone, even though I'm a car guy, I also love to use my leaf blower for other things other than drying the car. And so what I see and where I see this going is expansion of this system to where we have our own mount. And now that's newly improved, which we haven't covered yet, but these newly improved designs to where we can attach these other parts to that base, what we call the proximal tube, where it's easily disconnected. You know, the design really was inspired by the Mosmatic or MTM quick disconnects on the pressure washing guns, where no one thought of a stubby short configured pressure washing gun until, I don't know who thought of this, Matt. I don't want to, perhaps you did, maybe perhaps someone else did, but just a shortening effect. But knowing that people don't want it short from that point moving forward for everything, attaching the wand actually has a lot of merit in the washing process. I view that the same thing for using a blower, where there's merit for using interchangeable either tips or the extension that's included in that product development map, and so that would be something that we're excited about. Maybe other people are excited about that as well.
Yeah, I that's why I'm in on this whole project, is that we're learning this in the vacuum world, we've learned this in the spray bottle world. What happens is, because what you're doing is hard, people, companies, manufacturers give up, and a lot of times they don't have the customer, like they don't have someone to purchase it. So they get halfway in and realize, well, shoot, let's just stick to the 90-cent sprayer, or let's just stick with, even in pressure washing, no one was making great, quick disconnects. They were just some one-off cheap, and we had to use all kinds of adapters until you can show the manufacturer that there's a market for this. And so I view this very similarly here, in that, like in the vacuum world, we're finding you just get what you get. Everything's a 10-cent part. And there's like maybe 2 or 3 iterations of that 10-cent part, when if there was like a $3 part, everyone would want it. But to get to that $3 part, one, you'd have to know what people wanted, which the manufacturer generally doesn't. And then 2, you've got to be willing to fumble through it, screw it up, and have it sort of fit and not fit until you have, version 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10. And I think that the Obsessed Garage audience in general is the perfect audience to help. I just know that I'm willing to buy 3 or 4 of these ApexAire parts and throw them away to get to the right one, because if I tried to make it on my own, it's going to cost me $250,000 to do it. If I have to spend $70 4 times, I'll freaking do that. I'll do it 10 times, if I can get to something that I'm interested in. But the caveat to this for me is, if it doesn't exist, my life is not like thrown off course here. Like, it's not that important, right? So that's where I get in trouble a lot with the world, is that I'm super thankful despite the look on my face, but it's not so important to me that I have to have something to complain about and to yell about and to kick and scream. I'm just happy it exists, because I know how hard it is, and I know that we would end up with what exists in the world if we weren't willing to build things the way you're chasing this. And who knows, maybe at the end of the day, like with my press-all project, at the end of the day, it may not work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I may just give up at some point.
Yeah, I think going into this project, the dilemma that I was faced with, this was back early last year, Matt, where you and I were going through what could this look like to bring this product to market. That's where I was wrestling with this dilemma of, hey, it's been fun and experimental. It's great to produce something and to get people's reaction to that product, but then it's a different level to then say, all right, we got the reaction. Is that enough to say, let's move forward with producing this thing? Or is that, is it already just run its course? And I think seeing the continued interest, seeing the continued support from the Obsessed Garage community, and Obsessed Garage, you guys, has been really the thing that has helped me carry momentum through this process. Because I heard someone that I respect say this, and something that he was telling me about is this patient urgency, where we're having this patience along the entire way, but every time we're now in this decision mode of making a decision. I would say the younger me, I'm 36 years old, but the younger me would have likely sat on those decisions so long to try to make the exact right decision, and things would just pass me by. But now I've learned a lot of things in my life that, and actually noticed that now I'm still able to do that enough to sit on that decision, but eventually being able to make a decision much more quickly with that urgency. And that urgency has been really helpful for me and the project to actually come to existence to where it is today, even though it's taken a lot more time than everyone wanted, even though it's taken a lot more money than I wanted. It's now come to where it is. And so I'm grateful that I've, again, the sub, Matt, you shared your anger about some of these people and their feedback, but for me, these are some of the things we had no clue on in the product development of, gosh, people are going to pick up their blower from the tip. Even of all the dozens of people that have maybe tried this in prototype form and even in production form, that never came on our radar. So I'm actually really grateful for the feedback, even though it was painful to hear it.
Yeah, you're
I'm
right.
grateful for that feedback.
Those people are great. I love that. It's the pile on people that I really dislike. The pile on of, they didn't even buy one. They didn't put any money up. They didn't take any risk. It's like, oh, this sucks. You suck. Everything Obsessed Garage did. That kind of stuff just really makes me freaking angry, because we're pouring our heart and soul into this.
Yep.
Like, I saw this with my G80 M3, and I'm talking about my struggles with the thing, like I was giving it or something. There's just the pile on people who just really get under my skin, that make it so important. But they bring the importance into it when they never even really took the bet with us. And that's the struggle I have. I see it with Krenzel stuff all the time. Every time there's a Krenzel, we sold like freaking 15,000 of them, and like maybe once a month there's a post if somebody has a leaking issue. That's like 12 a year of the 3,800 that we sold. Like, it's pretty darn good, and like, I've had problems with Porsches and BMWs and problems with really expensive things, but I think it's the entitlement that really bothers me the most. And so the reason I wanted to make this video is not for me to complain about that. It's to show that we're really invested in this. We're really invested in this process. So kind of bring us home here, you two. Tell us what's coming. When is it coming? What are you promising? What are we doing here? What's the next step?
Sure.
Tommy, do you want to start that?
Sure. Yeah, I can. So, part of the process and shipping out the first batch of them, and then us discovering that the distill tip came off of the proximal tube more easily than we would have hoped. We had met and had a conversation about, like, okay, what do we do, right? So there was two options proposed to us, and one of them was to let's say fix A was to adjust the springs. So put a stiffer spring in the little clips that would make it more difficult for the tube to come off. So that was fix A. And then fix B was a completely new design that would eliminate any issue of the thing, popping off when it shouldn't have. And so while fix A, let's say, maybe is kind of like a Band-Aid almost, like it would fix it for the most part, but there's still a chance of it. Fix B in the new design would completely solve it. The only issue with the fix B is that it would lose the backwards compatibility of future tips. And so when we had, 1,000, 1,500 of these things out there, for you know, the Obsessed Garage customer that was bought into this whole system of things that will eventually come out. You know, backwards compatibility is super important. You know, if they have something and they purchase it with the anticipation that if they want to, they can expand on that system. You know, if that's no longer available, that's, you know, kind of not good. And so the decision was made to go with Fix A. You know, it fixed the distal tip from detaching good enough where, like, unless you were like really yanking on the thing really hard with the heaviest battery, like, it wouldn't come off. And so we felt at the time that that was the move to do. And so that's what we did. You know, we switched all the springs out and shipped out, I think it was the next 500 units or something like that, out that way with the better springs. And so after that, I think after we did the spring switch, that's when the decision was made to bring the tooling and production to the US. And so when that happened, again, we talked about it a little bit, where when we switched to US manufacturing, the parts were slightly just different size, and it didn't work out so well. And so where we are now, and I guess, David, this is kind of where you can pick up, is we, based on all the trials and errors of changing the packing settings and the cooling settings and stuff, we weren't able to get it where, you know, it needs to be. And so that's when we decided, like, hey, we probably should switch to Fix B and have the new design. So,
yeah, new design was a bigger decision. Gosh, Tommy, how long ago was that? 3 weeks ago when we made that decision. And Fix B, really, we feel confident that it eliminates that pull-off issue. Just in the change of geometry of how those clips work. We need to elongate those two clips on that distal tube, and also modify one of the base part, to where it just attaches so much more securely. And but we knew that in so doing, we would be losing backward compatibility for future parts of that system. And so that's where ApexAire, we made the decision of saying, hey, because that solution is so much better, I'm going to be more confident in products out in customers' hands, people's hands, as the person that's brought this to where it is. That confidence I wanted. That's what I really wanted. But I also knew the trade-off that was, there's 2,000 people that have, put a lot of faith, so to speak, or most of them did, put faith in the fact that, hey, I'm pre-ordering this, it's going to be an early adoption. I wanted to make sure that we did the right thing for them too. And so with that Fix B, we're confident it's going to be worth the wait, and expected timeline for US production parts with both fixes, so to speak, is going to be end of January or earlier February. But as far as how to honor the folks that have purchased those initial 2,000 and have just been along the ride with us, what we're proposing here is to say, hey, when those new parts, the US made units are ready, we would love to send you one, and basically to replace yours. The catch is that what we're going to request is for you to send yours back, your Chinese made unit back to us. And so we'll take care of all the costs to get it to you. And there's going to be some proof of purchase, validation, but send yours back, and actually, pay for that shipping back. But we'd love to just, again, honor the people that request a new one be sent. And for us, what we want, it's two reasons. One, we want to, again, honor the commitment that some people have had and the patience that people have had to the new product, but also we want to learn a lot in that process of getting these other units back in our hands, so we can know what we can do to improve on product quality, delivery, and development for future things down the road.
So here's what I would do.
That's
This is up to you people. This is me talking here. And most of the people, you know, a good percentage of the people have a lot more money than I got. I just buy another one. Freaking, you know, I probably wouldn't even buy the one I have is fine. It works great. So my advice to most people is if the thing's freaking working, then just know that you're putting David in a tough spot here financially. David is not rich. And so, you know, if I were you and if you value what he's doing here, just buy another one, you know, or not, you know. But he will honor it for those of you who, you know, are warranty people, you warranty junkies.
Yeah, I mean, that was, I mean, David, when you had first proposed that, I mean, that was kind of my first reaction. I think if you remember, I was like, oh, dang, that's like almost unheard of. Like, no company does that sort of thing. Like, are you going to be okay doing that? And you're like, yeah, you know, we will be okay. But yeah, similar to, you know, what Matt said, I think most of the people that have this thing use it and love it. And so, yeah, I don't see, you know, everyone
knowing
wanting
that it's quirked. There's some quirks
Sure.
to it, right? I know that there's some quirks to mine. I don't pick it up from the darn. That's why I never knew it'd be an issue. I don't pick it up from, and you do this when you get a new thing. You're like looking for, like, we're all guilty of this, especially obsessed people. Is like, well, look, I got this water bottle. Where's the flaw? Okay, and you immediately have an initial reaction of like, oh my gosh, especially if it costs a lot of money, that there's something wrong with it that you eventually overlook. And so that we have a lot of that with a new product specifically. But yeah, I would tell you, I know I'm not sending mine back, so I'm just going to buy more. Now, people could argue, well, Matt, you're selling, he's making money, but I do it with everything, you know, in life. Very rarely, you know, now I had a TV that was broken, you know, in shipping. You know, that was $5,000. I'm going to ask for that to be fixed, but you know, I get something with a nick on it, you know, I buy this knife and there's a nick on it, I'm just going to polish it up and just keep it. Or if it bothered me enough, I'd probably just buy another one. But I understand a lot of people have been trained and taught, you know, that Walmart mentality that, you know, you everything's returnable and you get everything for free. But, you know, I think I would just ask people that if you like this kind of idea, this process, that knowing that the biggest contributors in the world are the ones, we talked about this earlier, the biggest contributors in the world are the ones who always end up at the back of the line, and the takers end up at front of the line. But I think in the long run, it all works out for you if you're a contributor, not just a taker from this. And like I said, I'm excited this thing exists. So we're going to be looking at delivery in March.
It's an aspect always, yeah, that's the thing. Always put a little bit buffer in there, because I mean,
well, as we know right now, it's going to be, you know, we think it's January, and you know, hopefully we can do that. I've just always been one to, let's just tell you what I think, and then we change it if it, you know, and like an intelligent, rational person's got other things going on in their life. They're not like sitting there waiting at the post box or their freaking, you know, post office box for their darn $70 thing that would be cool if it existed in the world. So I'm banking on that level of intelligence and humanity.
Yeah, and one thing I hope that we've done, you know, for all of our customers, whether they're waiting for a pressure washer or, you know, the Ego Stubby or whatever, is, you know, the reserve your spot emails. I hope that you guys are seeing value in that, and like, we're just relaying everything that we know to you. We're trying to be as transparent as we possibly can, and so, you know, we're thankful for your support and your patience with us to develop this awesome thing.
Yeah, we have the darn best customers in the world, and what I'm trying to do is eradicate the annoying entitled ones, and let's just stick with the best customers in the world. All of us. I mean, I know people think that I'm real annoying, but like, I'm probably one of the best customers on the planet, because I'm super thankful and I really like products and I really want to be a part of it, and I don't complain despite what people think. And so most of our customers are like that. They're the freaking best. And I tell this with every manufacturer that won't let me sell their product. Say, look, I don't think you understand who's buying this stuff. Like, these are like the most intelligent, rational, least entitled people on the planet. And these are the people you want to be your customer, because then they're going to go sell it for you.
Yep.
And so we ship the product that our customer base is not going out and selling it for us, because it's not really that great, and so when we get something that is great, then they'll go out and sell it for us and say, hey, this is the thing that you need, because the people that we are influencing are the people that influence everybody else in their lives. So anyway, I wanted to put this call together and just be really authentic and transparent with you guys. And those of you that are waiting on a Stubby, and if you don't want to wait, just email us, we'll give your money back. I would wait if I were you. I would feel confident buying. But those who don't want to deal with prototyping and deal with potential, first, second, third generation of things, you probably don't want to buy this. You probably want to wait a few years. To me, something so cheap, 60, 70, 80, 100, 200 bucks. I mean, I just figure out a way to work a little harder to be able to make decisions on things that I would like to have that, may be problematic in the first iterations. So.
I mean, that's the thing, using the Stubby, like I can remember the first time I used it, like just washing my car at home. Like, it really is so nice having that Stubby nozzle. So even if it wobbles a little bit, or if you pick it up wrong, it can detach. Like, the end use case of the process of drying a car with the Ego blower with the Stubby is just awesome.
I've been using the prototype that if you have breathed on it wrong would break in half for 2 years. For 2 years.
Right.
So, I'd rather have it than not in this world. And that's my belief. And that's what I'm going to continue to roll the dice on my darn reputation on this kind of stuff. And I'm going to, yell and scream and complain about, when people get entitled. But I think that without these risks, the risk that David's taking, the risks that, Obsessed Garage that we're taking with, reputation, I think that, we're going to make the world a better place by taking those risks and being willing to deal with the negative that comes from that. So anyway, that's where we're at on this stuff. Any other words? I think we've covered it.
Well, I could just encourage others. There might be, I guess, some of you within the Obsessed Garage community that have been thinking about something that you want to develop. I want to encourage you to take the leap in that, because I want to see what you can do, what you can make, what you can bring into the world.
That's a good point. And you even struggle with this a little bit, David, is that you're waiting for me. Eventually you just have to go, right? And so if you want to develop something, this happens to me. I probably get 2 or 3 emails a week on some idea, some product, and I love it. But if you want to do it, let's freaking do it. Like, you got to do it. Like, I'm not going to do it. I'll sell it, but I don't have the time. I don't have the bandwidth to do this for like 100 things. And so I think, I'll sell the heck out of it if it's great, but I need you to execute on the actual, producing of the product. And so I get this all the time where people want to, how much time and mind do you get, David? Not that much, right? And so you went and did it. I have many people that want to like hold hands and skip off to the rainbow sunset together, and I just can't do that. I'm making freaking 20 videos a week, and we've got 30 people here, and so I need people to execute on things, and then send it to me, and I'll tell you if it sucks or not. That's kind of how we do it now. I have Tommy to help and Nick to help, and the rest of the OG crew to kind of help with things. But I would encourage you to. I think we can make products to change the world. I just need your help to execute on it. Don't be an engineer, be an executor. And if you execute, then I'll take the risk with you for sure, 100%.
Yeah.
And then the whole idea with Obsessed Garage is that we, with ApexAire, we launched the Stubby, and then David can go out and sell it to use our footage and use our success to go out and sell it to real players, and the Lowe's or the Home Depots of the world in the future are opportunities as well. So
would it be helpful to share what it took financially to get to where it's at?
Yeah, how deep are you into this?
So I think that was the biggest unknown for me. Is I don't know where to begin, number one, and I don't know how much is it going to cost me? Now I'm going to share the costs and where I began. That may or may not be the right step for you, but also too, the costs were over time, right? So I'm going to be sharing totals, which may seem like larger numbers today, and they are. They are for me, for sure. But I think we got to also understand that this took time, and it wasn't all upfront. And but I think if I were listening, and if I had an idea, and if I wanted to think through, gosh, what would it take to get that into the world? That would be good to know. So where I started was I had my idea. I filed a provisional patent, which is nothing special. You do some line drawings. It can't be CAD. This is black ballpoint pen on a piece of paper, drawing out what it is, writing a brief description under each photo or drawing. And my drawings looked awful. And $100 to submit a provisional patent. That gets you 12 months of protection, so to speak, of that idea. Because in the United States, it's first to file, not first to have the idea. So that's why back in 2019, July of 2019, after Matt, you did the Ego video of drawing your car in July of 2019, I decided to do some line drawings, have a brief description of each drawing, submit that, $100 to submit that. From there, I then hired an engineer. Again, the engineers in my circle, I asked a friend, and that person introduced me to another friend. And in that, I knew I was going to have to fork over some money. Unlike maybe other engineers or other people that have access to either software or 3D printers, I didn't. And so I had to pay for that. And I was willing to, right? So I'd fork over a couple $1,000s. But again, that was all experimental at that point. Sending it over to my friend or everyone that would come over to my garage. Again, that's the first place where they would go. I would show them my prototypes. I felt really cool because I had prototypes in the garage. And from there, that's when I sent it to you, Matt. And I think start to finish of the total cost, maybe $5,000 to $7,000 of either legal or prototyping or even materials, because the parts that I was producing were much larger. Not every 3D printer can produce large parts like that. But then once we decided, hey, it's go time, from go time until now, I have a list of costs here, converting my provisional patent, which is, again, my janky scratch drawings, to then having all of the engineering drawings, hiring an attorney, a well-known attorney or in this area for consumer products, to then do the write-up, all in with that, consumer product attorney, contract attorneys to review things I'm signing, it was $10,000 just for legal. And no one loves paying legal. So I wanted to get that one out first. Next, engineering, $80,000 in engineering. That's both time, all the deliverables of working with the manufacturer, with the tool maker, revisions, testing. So when you guys did the Ego Stubby output comparative video, they created that report, did all of that testing. So $80,000 in last year and this year total, 80,000 there. But again, it started small. It came in monthly invoices. Next is the injection mold. Injection mold initially was $73,000. Half of it was the cost up front. The other half was upon it being delivered, so to speak. And then after some of the revisions that we're going to do, it's going to be another $7,000, so $80,000 for the injection mold. Just three different injection molds that I have to produce this product, and that's all of the project cost for legal, engineering, injection mold. There's shipping, taxes, tariffs, which is its own category because that may not apply to everyone. Shipping, air freighting everything over was a stinger, especially last year and this year. So who knows, this could be way different these days, but shipping the initial 1,000 from mainland China to Obsessed Garage I think it came in what, 2 pallets. The volume weight killed, even though they didn't weigh much, because they just took up so much space on an airplane. It was $8,000 for the air freight of those 2 pallets, and it took 15 days door to door to get there, and then tack on additional $2,000 in duties, taxes, and fees to get those products into the US. The injection molds, air freighting those, again, weighing more than a F90 M5. That happened in July of this year. That cost $11,000 to ship those. And if I would have instead said, no, let's do ocean, let's put it on a boat, wait 6 weeks, 24 weeks, who knows how long it's going to take, I could have saved $7,000 in shipping. But for me, the trade-off was worth knowing that it would be here in approximately 2 weeks. And then the other surprise was the cost of customs, duties, and taxes of the injection mold, and that was $11,000. So it took $22,000 to get the injection molds all in from China to here. But there's some other things like other normal business expenses that are at this point pretty minimal. But that's the all-in cost for all of those categories.
And
So
I can see
what is that total? Did you add it up?
Yeah, so I didn't add it up. 60.
And I can, while you guys are doing math, I can say, so how Matt, you had asked David, at one point, did you ever consider, bailing? I can totally see now that we have the financial background, that timeline makes perfect sense. Up until, okay, I have the design and here's an idea that I want to execute on. You were what, maybe maximum $10,000 into it?
Yeah, it was nothing.
So it was from that decision on, okay, now we need to produce the thing. Now we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
That's a big jump. And so I can see why, where your pause was really the decision to do production rather than, along the production process and then bailing. Like once you said, okay, I'm doing production, I can see you're like, all right, I'm in it. Like we're doing this thing.
Yep. And again, I'm still having fun in the process. My wife has been supportive. Yeah, it's over. I did the quick math. It's over 200,000. And I didn't have 200,000 in the bank to do this. And so, it's happened over time. That's where things like the pre-order with Obsessed Garage or Obsessed Garage ordering another, whatever a volume that you guys are ordering now. That really was helpful in this process for the company, for me, and yeah, still enjoying it, and learned a lot from doing this one time. I think probably the telltale sign for me that the company is going to continue to exist and that we're going to continue to develop products is that it's like on the worst, the time that I'm going to be the worst at this, and going from someone who wasn't doing this and still has another job outside of this too, that allows me some flexibility to put a lot of time and effort into this, still allowing myself to go through that process, learn a lot, perhaps even fail in certain aspects, at least in my head. I feel like I failed in certain parts, but also feeling, gosh, what do we deliver? What do we create as a result? To know that I'm still having fun, and that I still want to do another one, it's probably a telltale sign that there's going to be more products to come within this, or who knows, I might bring back that air freshener. Might be janky in Matt's eyes, but I still think it's cool.
Yeah, I mean,
but yeah, I'm excited about it.
The cost that a lot of costs you won't repeat, so
yeah.
It's like going to college. You spend a couple $100,000 getting a degree, and maybe that degree didn't set you up specifically for your job or the future, but it certainly taught you how to execute, how to finish things. And so this capital investment, you're going to have to sell 10,000 of these to break even roughly. 10 or 12,000 of these just to break even. So for a while, you're going to be working for free, right? Just trying to recoup. And then, at some point, hopefully you can attach things onto this that cost $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 that you can attach onto this project they then can get you into the black, you know,
Yeah.
much quicker. Well, thanks for sharing that. I think that adds a lot of context to people. One, for those who are aspiring to develop a product because they have a great idea. Hopefully they can avoid, you know, some of these because of the timing and the world. But I would, you know, say that depending on the product you're developing, there's going to be pitfalls that you aren't anticipating. I think that's the moral of the story here, is that, you know, the moral of this whole conversation is that in order to change little parts of the world, there's risk, there's unanticipated consequences that can come with this kind of stuff. But this is how you know, this is a potential way for you to affect change and affect cool things.
Yeah.
And then the ultimate of this is the relationships that you develop along the way. I mean, that's really the byproduct of all of this. And the money at the end, hopefully, is the result of good decisions, the result of good product, the result of good mistakes that hopefully will result in something great in the end. And that's, you know, that's business. That's life.
Yep.
So anyway, thanks for being a part of this, everyone. Those of you who've ordered this, hopefully this is helpful to give you some insight into where we're at with it. Those of you that are thinking of making something in the future, this gives you some insight into that. And you can tell we're laying it on you. This is there's no sugarcoating any of this crap. We're telling you that the whole deal here. There's no behind the scenes stuff we're holding back on. So anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for being a part of this. And we'll do more of this stuff if you find it interesting. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.